This is Jimmy from Game Domain with the top 10 indie games of 2016. 2016 was a fantastic year for independent games. Indie games are usually original, surprising, and carry a lot of gameplay for your dollar. If you usually overlook indie games or think they're all terrible copycat games, here's what you miss in 2016. Superhot. Superhot is one of the reasons that indie games are so great. No one in a major game studio would have thought, hey, let's make bullet time the game, much less let's take bullet time the game and make it even slower, but that's pretty much what Superhot is. Time only moves when you move. Superhot took that simple idea and slipped it into a sleek, stylized first-person shooter. It takes a genre that usually rewards fast reflexes and using cover and turns it into something that is both contemplative and more aggressive. Instead of leaving a traditional trail of bodies, you're engineering a gravel road made out of bad guys' faces. You're getting out a protractor and a surveying tripod to calculate the distances and times involved in connecting implements of violence with punks' bodies so you can execute a precise sequence of mook-shattering moves. If you do it right, you will feel like Robert Downey Jr.'s Sherlock Holmes, and that's a great way to feel. Superhot is the kind of game that delivers an original idea very well, and while direct imitators have came out, the mechanics are probably going to be seen in non-copyright first-person shooters from this point forward. I'm not saying bullet time is coming back. Bullet time is just an easy aim mode inserted at random in a firefight. Superhot's core mechanic promises creative movements designed around players thinking their way through frenetic firefights. It might just be the new turret sequence, where it's thrown in to break up boring, repetitive gameplay in bad games that will absolutely happen, but it's also going to be a good tool in the toolbox for good game designers. The Westport Independent. The Westport Independent isn't fun in a traditional sense. You run the Westport Independent, a newspaper in an unnamed country where the government is about to seize control of all media. As the editor, you choose which stories you want to tell and which reporters will write them up. You can't report on every story, so the act of choosing which stories you print is inherently editorial. And if you write about government abuses, your reporters and you are at risk from the government. But when you aren't critical of the government, the rebels think you're being too friendly and still in danger. After 12 weeks, the consequences of your actions are shown, and you're either satisfied with that or you're not. You get to see how the lives of your reporters and the Westport Independent turn out. It is a great game, not just a great indie game, because it gets back to the roots of what makes video games great. Heroism. Nothing is more heroic than going up against an evil, violent, fascist empire armed with nothing but a printing press. Hyperlight Drifter. Hyperlight Drifter is my pure nostalgia pick for 2016. It was kickstarted back in 2013 by Alex Preston and finally released this year. It's an art project. Alex Preston has a heart disease and wanted to make a game to communicate that to other folks. I can kinda see the threads of something as big, rich, and fragile as life distilled into Hyperlight Drifter, but really I was too deep into the gameplay. The gameplay is like if Zelda was just a bit different. The series had made some great games, but Hyperlight Drifter is the original 8-bit promise realized. It's tight, versatile, varied, and challenging. I always felt like a powerful figure fighting other powerful figures, and the best encounters left me feeling like one slip up would send me tumbling on a knife's edge. There's a period between when you've got a skill down and when it becomes tedious, and Hyperlight Drifter kept me in that range more than any video game in recent memory. It's a video game. Capital V, capital G. Punch Club. I really like Punch Club, and I don't know why. I hate grindy role-playing games, and Punch Club is a grindy role-playing game. I loathe 80s references that lack a certain flair, and Punch Club lacks that flair, but I really whipped my little boxer named Whatever into shape, and I exercised him and did odd jobs with him, and learned the way of the bear until I almost fell asleep at my keyboard. It's charming almost in spite of itself, with its obvious references and simple characters and the way it undercuts its own dramatic themes. I mean that in a good way. It's unpretentious. Punch Club is a great game and you could get a beer with it, and the payoff for Punch Club's grinding is impressive. Duskers. In Duskers, you have a spaceship and you dock with derelict spaceships and send probes on board to explore them with keyboard commands. Your clumsy bots give you limited information and have to plan around dangerous monsters and power outages to salvage everything you can before moving on to the next ship. The most obvious reason to like Duskers is that it acquaints laypersons with basic concepts of computer logic and coding, and that's great. Everyone hates obvious, cloying educational games because they're not really games. They're flashcards with a lot of extra steps. Duskers is actually a good game. It's also a typing teacher. It's been almost 20 years since Typing of the Dead came out, and it's high time another game added to the threat of gruesome bodily dismemberment to the toolbox of people trying to teach junior high students basic computer skills. But aside from any irrelevant interest like increasing computer literacy, Duskers is cool. Every other game in the universe makes hacking into some pipe dream minigame, and it's procedurally generated, and it does not do that thing that other procedurally generated games do, where I'm left feeling like either the game generated enough supplies for me to live on, or it didn't, and I'll die while the game is shrugging at me, pointing at the random number generator. But even when I die, I still kind of enjoy seeing all the ways I can misspell Claude A-1 before I'm ripped apart by a space monster. Tharsis. When Earth receives a mysterious signal from Mars, we sent 6 astronauts on the ship Iktomi to investigate. A series of micrometeor strikes destroys the mission's food supplies, kills 2 of the crew, and causes a series of cascading failures across the ship. You have to keep the crew alive and the ship functional for 10 weeks until you get to Mars. As more failures plague Iktomi, you have to assign crew to affected sections to resolve them. If you don't, either the ship will lose integrity or your crew will take damage. The crew's hunger, stress, and health are consistently chipped away, and it's necessary to assign them to Iktomi's various sections, sometimes non-damaged ones, to manage them. Firewatch. Yeah. Walking simulator and Oscar bait Firewatch. The gameplay is that instead of turning the page when you hear the tone, you interact with objects or use your radio to hear the rest of the story. But it's a damn good story, and it's well executed. The stories in most games are either there to support the gameplay, they're tacked on in an attempt to create emotional investment, or they're just non-existent. Games should have whatever story they need to make them work. Doom doesn't need a story about early onset dementia. Firewatch does. It's quiet and contemplative and well placed. The long walks let the player's mind wander within the game to engage with the same intensity as any bullet hell shooter, but in a completely different way. And it couldn't do that if it wasn't beautiful, well written, and well voice acted. Rich Sommer and Cissy Jones both deserve some kind of award for their work here. Everyone involved does. Maybe not Oscar, but something. Stardew Valley. Stardew Valley is a farming sim. Farming sims exist to waste time, like most games do. Most gamers hate farming sims, not only because of the basic contempt for casual gaming, and Farmville specifically, which is worthy of contempt on its own merit, but because they're repetitive. They lack physically challenging gameplay mechanics, and there's no story to garner an investment. Stardew Valley addresses those complaints by adding role-playing systems, a straightforward combat system, and a rich set of well-characterized NPCs. Stardew Valley is a world designed to be explored and has choices which change how you interact with the world. It's open-ended, but with curated content, and if fiascos like No Man's Sky have taught us anything in 2016, it's that it's worth to add some direction and authorial intent to games. Stardew Valley is $15. It's a fantastic way to waste some time. This is the police. You're a police chief who's being forced out of office. You gotta put aside $500,000 in 6 months for retirement, which you can do above board if, and I quote, you net some big fish and hit all your bonuses. It's primarily a police chief sim. Recruit cops, handle their personal stuff, and assign them to crimes. A good performance lets you level up your cops and buy the department upgrades. There are dozens of games like that, I'm sure. However, in This is the Police, you're a man who needs money, a man in a dirty town that needs money, and as police chief, you come across things, lucrative things. The mob needs you to look the other way. The mayor needs you to divert resources to help his friends. And sometimes you're at risk if you don't work with the pillars of corrupt communities. These events are unpredictable and keep the sim aspects from dragging on. They're the whole reason I'm here. It's a game with a style like few others, from the visuals to the dialogue. It takes the heart of the private detective pulp novel and pours it perfectly into a police chief game. The feel fits, without ever clashing with bright stylized visuals. The dialogue is a bit overwrought in places, but I forgive it because it's in service to the exceptional style. Slime Rancher. I've heard a lot of derision about Slime Rancher, that it's a kid's game because it's colorful and not focused on combat and centers on adorable chubby slimes, which I think we all assume are just hairless tribbles. Slime Rancher might be more accessible for kids than the average game, but all ages is the phrase I'd use. You have to plan ahead to catch the right slime types, make a garden, and avoid tars. Then the market for the plorts you get out of the slimes goes down, and you shift to another slime type to keep your money coming in. Do you use Largos to collect double plorts and less space but deal with additional difficulties wrangling them? It's a game that requires some real choices. It's not pressuring, but you grind some achievements or to buy stuff. Slime Rancher is about encouraging exploration, taking some risks, and even making some harsh resource management decisions. The most kiddie thing about it is that it feels like an open world game when it has a very linear design, and that's to focus the player's attention and direct them towards new game elements as they're introduced. A lot of other open world games would do well to have that kind of direction baked in. That's all 10. We tried to include indie games of all types. 2016 did not make it easy to just pick 10. Let us know your favorite indie games in the comments below. And remember, if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe, and if you want to check out other videos made by the Game Domain team, take a look at our other channels. Thanks for watching, see you next time.